Admiral Rob Bauer, thanks for being with us with German television.
Yeah, great to be here. Although the weather is, well, Dutch, so to say.
Dutch weather, maybe this is a prediction for the NATO summit, stormy and unpredictable, or what do you expect?
After rain, there's always sunshine. So it's part of life, the weather, and we know that in the Netherlands.
So then let's look at the NATO summit. You know also in the Netherlands that you have a new NATO Secretary General from the Netherlands. He wants to have a bigger spending, 5% should be spent by each country. Are you optimistic that all the member states are willing to do this?
Well, actually, all nations now want to spend more. And that is basically being agreed by the Ministers of Defense before the summit. It's going to be let's say the leaders probably will say that again. It is sometimes difficult in a democracy, in a group of nations, sovereign states, to agree amongst each other. It's not the first time in the history of NATO that things are sometimes difficult. I think we should be proud of it. It's basically what we defend, that we are democracies and that we disagree sometimes. I think the scope of the summit is a little bit more limited than normal. Normally you see a declaration that is very wide in topics and every nation can bring in some of the topics. That is now being restricted very much to make sure that we talk about the most important topics and that we basically agree on them.
And maybe to please Donald Trump, the US president, is the whole framing of this summit, the shortening of the summit and also the short declaration and the 5%, is this all a gift for the US president?
No. This is a part of what NATO is doing always. It's very difficult. I mean, the Secretary General, now Mark Rutte, is herding cats. I don't know, have you ever tried herding cats? It's very, very difficult. And that's what NATO is about. You have to herd cats. It's sovereign states. So it's not only about President Trump. We had the discussion about Prime Minister Sanchez of Spain, same sort of discussion. So the Secretary General has to look at all the nations to make sure that everybody is on board. And I think he's doing an excellent job at the moment.
But also the ambassador to NATO from the United States, Mr. Whitaker, said that this 5% goal, it might be a surprise back because 1.5% of it are for infrastructure. Do you fear that some states might just declare anything in the future for defense spending?
I think the 3.5% is more, let's say, how do you say, detailed in terms of what you can spend it on, and the 1.5% is probably more loosely formulated. But it has to add to the resilience, and I think that is a topic that is very important because you cannot only talk about the armed forces. This is also about infrastructure. This is about food security, energy security, cyber security. All these things have to be in place to be secure. It's not just the armed forces. So therefore, we need to spend much more on that. We have sort of outsourced security for the last 30, 40 years to the armed forces and thought they will fix it for us. But it is our problem. It is the problem of our societies, and therefore it is about the businesses. It is about the individual citizens. It is about the financial institutions. It is about everybody. And therefore the 1.5% on top of the 3.5% is a good deal. If you think that is a lot of money, 5%, then talk to President Zelensky. He spends 35% of his GDP on a war. So 5% to prevent war is a good deal.
You say it's a good deal. Zelensky will be here as well after lots of diplomacy before the summit. Some states didn't want him to attend. Do you think that with the scope that Russia is capable of invading Eastern Europe by 2029, this is enough that NATO is committing here? And does it have to be delivered as well? Just not some figures, some numbers, but it has to be on the ground as well?
Absolutely. So the money, of course, is very important because you have to be able to pay for things if you need to buy more, like air defense systems. But of course, you need to be able to buy something that you can use, which is the capabilities themselves. That is an air defense system with ammunition. So what we are seeing now is that the next hurdle is not only after the money hurdle, is the production capacity hurdle that needs to grow tremendously. We have built a just-in-time, just-enough economy in our part of the world. We cannot basically respond to peak demand signals, as we saw in COVID for medical, as we now see in the defense industry for in a war. And so we need to be able to ramp up our production much faster. And that requires that the nations understand this is a crisis, not war. This is a crisis, as we basically used public money to find a vaccine for COVID-19. That was a lot of public money put on the table and to incentivize businesses to find that vaccine. The same for the defense industry. I think we can solve this. We are together. NATO is 50% of the world's economic power, 50% of the world's military power. So we have everything to basically solve this problem, but we have to focus.
The focus might be difficult because there's also a war in the Middle East, the crisis in Iran, also with the bombing of the nuclear plants there, might overshadow the NATO summit. Do you see any possibility that this might cause a NATO defense clause case, or that this might become a topic for NATO, what happens in Iran and what the United States are doing there?
Unlikely. To do something in Iran, you need a mandate and you need 32 nations to agree to do something there. And I think that chance is very, very small.
Although Mark Rutte yesterday explained that he thinks that the attacks of the United States on the nuclear facilities are covered by international law, you agree?
I think we can all agree that we should prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon.
Thank you so much for your answers and your time, Admiral Bauer.
Okay, pleasure.